Welcome back to Podcast Recovery, everyone. We're your hosts, David O.
And Eric V.
Today we're joined by our special guest, Krissy. How are you doing today?
Yeah, I'm fine, thank you.
Good.
You mean like when people ask how are you doing, I'm wondering if you mean you're being courteous, how are you doing, or you mean how are you doing? Yeah.
So, where are you from, Krissy?
Yeah. I'm from the States, Nigeria.
Awesome. And how long have you been in recovery?
Honestly, it's a little hard to say. I would say officially for me. I think the journey started in 2016, but I think for me, officially, and consciously making the effort and knowing it's a priority, that would be about 4 or 5 months ago, maybe.
Okay. All right. Well, with all that out of the way, to share your story with us, so take it away.
Yeah, okay, so I don't think it's a super spectacular story. I'm sure lots of people my age or older or younger, it's the typical go to school, meet people, learn new things, good and bad. I think I got into the habit of drinking when I first went to university, but then after a while, being in the university. And of course, back then it was just for fun, like it is for most people. But then I left school, a series of events in school, and I had to graduate 1 year late, long story. But I left school and then, of course, got into the job market. At some point, my first real job I got was radio. So I worked for a radio station in Abuja, which is the capital of Nigeria. And it was great. It was fine. I mean, up until that point, there was no, there were no issues as far as that was concerned. So I had to move jobs, not literally move jobs, but then I had to do something new. It was still broadcasting, but then it was different. It was talk radio. That was something relatively new. It wasn't something that was very popular at the time. So I moved to Lagos, which is a commercial capital. Yes, sort of changed. It was different lifestyle, different environment, different requirements, more pressure at work. It was fun, but then it was almost like a black hole. It felt like it was sucking you in. Your whole life is centered around it. So yes, for me, at some point, I think drinking became a way to cope with the extra workload or extra emotional or whatever it is, mental pressure from work. Also because I wasn't, I lived in Lagos sometime in the past, but then I wasn't very familiar with the town, and it's totally different ballgame from Abuja. Very busy, lots of traffic. It's not the kind of town where you just wake up and say you want to, let me go pay someone a visit on the mainland. So I'll be back to the island. It doesn't really work like that. So yeah, it was sort of my compassion. Because I realized just talking about it recently that I think I sort of made it a reward for work. So I would work, and then reward myself with a drink. It seems like it seemed harmless. It didn't seem so bad. And then I had to go back because I knew I didn't want to work in Lagos. Lagos is way too fast for me. I mean, I loved the town. I grew up there, but wanted to go back to Abuja. So I eventually went back to Abuja on the same job because we had to start a new station in Abuja. For some reason, this had sort of migrated with me, The habit had migrated with me. Of course, in the midst of all of this random moving, suddenly I'm changing location. I had all of these emotional and mental issues. I was dealing with. Apparently, I was becoming depressed. And the alcohol seemed to be, in the short term, at least, it seemed to be a solution. And then usually it's hard to find the tipping point. So you don't find out until you're on the other side. But yes, so where was I? I went back to Abuja. This was 2 years after I'd been in Lagos. But sometime around 2013, 2012, 2013, I was back in Abuja and back to work. Again, like I said, my whole life was centered around work. I lived within the premises. All I did was, the only times we went out was usually just to, go shopping, or it wasn't, yeah. And then I realized at some point, that I was barely keeping up. Like at first it was okay because when it first started, it wasn't a problem because I would still wake up in the morning. I mean, I'd been working all day, probably, drank myself to sleep the night before. I had to be up at about 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And it was still doable. It didn't feel like it was taking me too, to be honest. So yeah, sometimes you wake up and you're a little tired and you should be a little more light because you just slept, but yeah, it didn't seem like too much. It wasn't in my face. But by the time I got back to work in Abuja, and then the elections were coming towards the elections were in 2015. So sometime in 2014-ish, work gets very intense. So for me, that was just extra drama I did not need. For some reason, it's not sustainable. It gets to that point where it diminishes. So yeah, so at some point I had to leave work. Came back home 2016. My family thought it wise to take me to the rehab. Yeah, of course I was kicking and screaming. It's not like I happily went anywhere with anybody. I thought it was a little just thinking about it now. I think it was fair. I think it was sensible. So yeah, so that was 2000. But because of the way I found myself in that situation in rehab, because I was, I didn't have a choice in the matter. It was, I was, of course, rebellious towards it. The general attitude was rebellious. So I didn't. Of course, I knew it was the sensible thing to do, but I didn't feel very invested in it, if that makes any sense. I know it sounds a little stupid, but yeah. Yeah. But then sometime towards the end of last year, I realized as I was noticing new, or rather old patterns, I was like, okay, why does this place seem so familiar? I'm like, no. So I got to start to notice that your certain relationships, it's not sustainable. And so I got to the point where I said, you know what, look, let's do this again. Let's try this again. So yes, I mean, this is just me. Recovery for me is really just me taking responsibility for my life, or trying to, really, at the end of the day. The cycle is not sustainable.
Yeah.
It's not. And it's a waste of good time. Yeah. So long and short, that's it. It's of course it's a brief version of the series of events. So yeah, I think that paints a decent picture. Yeah.
All right. Well, we definitely have some questions for you. So how did alcohol overall affect your overall mental health?
Well, first of all, first it seems like the opposite of depression. You're up and up, you're hyper, you think you're gleeful and happy, but yeah, you get, like I said, it's like a curve. You get to the point where you really, honestly, just come back down and into the negative. So yeah, I was pretty depressed during my antidepressants. So I'm fine. I don't feel as depressed as I was in 2016. In 2016, now that I think about it, I was clearly not. I was clearly not in a very happy place. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what have you found to work positively to really help your recovery?
Well, I think the first thing is changing. For one thing, I'm more consistent with, my exercise routine. It's not like super intense, but it's been very consistent this year.
All right. So what are some of the challenges you faced in finding the right kind of care or support systems for your recovery? Because like in America, we have lots of different support systems, and I just don't know like what level of support systems you guys have there. So like what sort of things do you have in place, and have you found to really help you to further your recovery?
Okay, so for like you guys, you people have like Alcoholics Anonymous and all of those very specific support groups. We don't have as much of that here, at least not that I am aware of.
Yeah.
And even back in 2016, when I went to the facility, I was taken aback that, we had everything from schizophrenics and bipolar clients, to people abusing. I just felt like it was muddled up with different people with different problems, but receiving very similar, at least apart from their medication, perhaps, just receiving the same general care. So I'm not sure if that's how it's supposed to work, but yeah. But talking about the last few months, what I can say is I'm grateful for the general support that. So, for instance, I would say that a couple of months ago, I was at the bar somewhere here in Jos. This was sometime last year, and apparently I ran into a doctor. Now, he's not a psychiatrist himself, but then he belongs to the medical union, and he took my number, and all he wanted to say to me was, Are you sure you don't need some help? So you get that kind of informal support generally. It's something about being Nigerian. But also, because I stayed in touch with the doctors from the facility, it was very easy for me. I could get that. Again, it was a little informal between 2016 and now. It was very informal. Just say, how are you doing? What's going on? Need to talk to someone. It wasn't anything structured or intense or paid for. But then I realized, look, if you're going to do this, just do it. And since it didn't seem to be getting better, I turned to a super thrilled about that. I started off seeing them once a week. Now I see them once every other week. So, so far so good, to be honest. I think it's just nice to have somebody who holds you accountable to yourself, if that makes any sense.
Yeah.
There's somebody who just reminds you that this is a commitment you've made and this is something you're paying for, so get the most of it, Yeah. And yeah, they've been great so far. It helps. Mm-hmm.
Good. That's awesome. All right. What else could I ask? Have you noticed, are there any, like...
What happened to David?
What?
What happened to David?
This is David.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought it was Eric. Okay.
What?
I'm with you.
You're good. Are there any, like, social stigmas that, like in your country around alcoholism or mental health that are not necessarily like accurate? Like, do people have do people not like fully understand like what like the process of recovery?
Yeah. So, yes, of course. I mean, I'm not even talking about serious stigma, like, workplace type stigma. I'm talking just community. And it's always like that. Bipolar or schizophrenic. Nobody understands any of that. Together. Okay, let me not say nobody understands any of that. Of course, more educated, more enlightened, more educated, I think, exposed portion of Nigerians understand. I think that even within that group, tons of people don't fully, because for me, that was the first time I came up close and personal with this, person who was diagnosed with schizophrenia or a person who was bipolar. I had never really one-on-one witnessed or experienced that. So I'm the minority because it's not cheap to, rehab is not something that's affordable for people, everybody who needs it here.
Yeah.
Yes, of course,
Absolutely.
a lot of people don't understand these things, and we're sometimes very quick to attribute things to everything to the spiritual. So you can imagine how that goes. Or sometimes they'll say the person is retarded or the person is possessed or the person, it could be anything. So of course it's hard. And then with alcohol, it's even, with alcohol, it gets interesting. Now, alcohol is, because it's legal.
All right. Have you used spirituality at all in your recovery? And how have you used it to help you in any way?
Well, I think the whole idea of faith helps. It means, already that's you starting on a positive note. But spirituality, though, it's very interesting that while we were, we call it the center. While we're at the center, the facility, so some people talked about being taken to malams or being taken to certain, other, traditional religions and stuff. Also believe that, if a person has issues with that, they have their way of dealing with it. So, people talk about spirituality. I don't know if I am qualified to talk about other people's experiences with that, but I will say for me, it works to just always start out on that positive note of knowing that, all of this will make meaning and that it's not something designed to kill you. I think that basically, in a nutshell, it works for me.
Awesome. Perfect.
Yeah.
Have you gotten to because with a lot of recovery, it's very fellowship based. So like you really get to rely on other people and kind of recover together. So have you been able to like work with any like groups of people or fellowships? And have you like been able to like share in your recovery with other people, or have you been predominantly like doing it alone?
Okay, so my first thoughts when I was leaving the center in 2016 was, at that point, I was somewhat emotionally invested in the place and the people I had met. So I'd asked. They said, "Oh no, we have these meetings. I think monthly meetings or something, but it's very supervised. It's the way they described it to me. It seemed like a very close setting, very much like being, at the center again." I was like, "No, thank you." But what I did do was I stayed in touch with all of the people from that time. So Eric knows I have a podcast, pet project I put up some time ago on Anchor. First bits of the series is talking about that time and talking about 2016 and talking to one or two of the people from then, talking to the doctors and stuff, and then I move on to other things. But I'm saying that's how invested for me. That's, I think, my own way of staying in touch and having a small community, because I'm in touch with, I guess, almost 10 of them. Maybe we don't
Mm-hmm.
talk very frequently, but then we share our experiences. We talk to each other when we just need someone to talk to or somebody who will understand. So yeah, I guess in a sense, we have that. Of course, with some people more than others, but I'm
Mm-hmm.
fine with that. Like I'm fine with that.
Awesome. All right. All right. I kind of have a fun question for you. Uh,
Okay.
I ask all of our international speakers this just because I'm curious. So, what is something funny or weird that you find about Americans?
About America, I think. Hmm. I've never really thought about it, but there's plenty little random moments that are funny. But to really think
Mm-hmm.
about it, what's that one thing? I think America is just proof that the concept of freedom is limitless and it's not an easy thing to resolve.
Yes. Yeah. Definitely. Definitely.
Yeah, and that's why there'll always be conflict. As far as you can imagine, freedom is as far as it goes for the next person, and it's their choice. So that's at some point it becomes a little tricky.
Mm-hmm.
America is proof of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. All right. I got a couple more questions for you. Um. What are your what's like your ultimate goal in recovery? At least like right now. Like I know Eric's a big supporter of like a 5-year plan. So like what
5 year
sort of
plan.
yeah. So what sort of goals do you have in recovery that you want to achieve? And basically, where's like the finish?
Sorry, I didn't get that last bit. Where is or I didn't get that very last bit. It was breaking up.
Can you hear me?
Hello? Yes, I can hear you
Hello?
now.
Okay.
I can
I'm
hear you
just
now.
saying, what direction are you aiming in your recovery, and what goals would you like to achieve?
Well, for starters, every time, and something very embarrassing happened the other day on Twitter, but every time I see people in recovery or people who have, probably beaten recovery, say, "Oh, this is my 30th year sober."
Mm-hmm.
In my mind, I'm like, okay, my goal for recovery is to not have to think about it. I want to get to the point where it's not so much of a problem that I actually have to think about it and celebrate the fact that I spent 30 years without drinking. I don't know if that makes any sense because
Yeah.
that would mean that it's not a problem.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All right.
just to go back to default settings, I guess, when it wasn't a problem.
Yeah. No, I
Yeah.
totally understand.
Yeah.
Da-da-da-da-da. And
Puppy. Oh.
all right, my last question I have for you is what are some obstacles? What are like some of the biggest obstacles that you've overtaken and conquered in recovery to be where you are today?
I would say the biggest one is just listening to my rational self to stop justifying things I know should not be justified. It's just winning over myself. So I think that was the beginning of anything changing. Like
Yeah.
I said at the start, I'm not one to say, oh, I'm there, or I've been 100. But then I see small
Yeah.
things every day that tell me that okay, something good is changing or something good is happening. Um, so yeah, I think for me the biggest thing was getting to the point where it wasn't I'm doing this because someone else or because of some person. No, I'm doing this because I've reasoned it out with myself, and if I'm being honest with myself, I need to do this. That I think that was for me the biggest thing, because I'm the kind of person who will at least attempt to justify. I will make a good attempt. But yeah, I had to come to that point. Maybe it's part of growing up. I had to come to woke up one morning, or it was one evening. I'd been drinking and something happened. I don't even remember what it was now. And I realized, look, this won't work. It won't work. Yeah. There's too much to do.
Yeah. I understand. And actually, I one more question popped up into my head, so this will be my last question. How important is gratitude and keeping a mindset of being grateful for your recovery? How important is that mindset moving forward?
But isn't that a part of faith? Mm-hmm. That for every little success you celebrate in your mind, or celebrate somehow, that for me it starts in the morning, really. I wake up, like I said this to my friend last time. I was like, wake up in the morning and birds chirping actually sounds nice. It sounds like something is happening. It's a new day, and you can feel that. I think that's part of spirituality. So what was the question again? So I'm clear. I'm sure I was going somewhere.
How important is gratitude in your mind moving forward in recovery?
So it starts with being grateful, like every single day. Waking up and having that positive mindset that, again, all of this is just a small part of a long journey that's going to be interesting and is going to end well, because you believe that that's what it's supposed to be. That's how it's supposed to be. So yes, you wake up feeling like you can do this. It's a good start. It doesn't work every single day, but it works most days.
Absolutely, and just getting off on the right foot is often half the battle.
Yeah, and sometimes well, I don't know about you, but me, sometimes I need an excuse to knock myself out. I need an excuse to go back to binging, but I just realized that it was me also running away from responsibility. So a small example, yesterday we were morning chores. It was Saturday, and I just realized there was very, very dark, low spirit around. Everybody had like cloud hanging over their heads, and we're not doing this. I consciously say to myself, we're not doing this. So it becomes my responsibility to sort whatever it is around, so that I can be comfortable, so that I don't have an excuse or don't have a reason to put myself in a state of mind that doesn't help me in any way, So it's all the little things. Yeah. And that you were asking about spirituality, I think that's part of it. You have to be sensitive to the things around you, to the energy around you, if it's something you can fix, you fix. If it's something you can't fix and you can run, you run. Yeah.
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions we got for you. So we'd like to thank you for joining us today.
Woo! Thank you for...
Absolutely.
It was nice talking to you too.
Absolutely. And Eric, are you able to do the sign off for us?
Sure. Whoa, we're a little hot there. Sure. Yeah. So, here at Podcast Recovery, we are fully self-supporting. So we need your help to, keep us creating new and engaging content for you all to, to help supplement parts of your recovery. And so there's a few different options. You can join the home group, which is our Patreon page, which you can find in the description below, as well as throwing a few bucks into the digital basket through our Venmo and PayPal accounts. You can also find us on YouTube, on Facebook, on Instagram, Twitter, and find our podcast anywhere that you can get our podcast, and find our show Thanks for Sharing on YouTube. So back to you, David.
All right, everybody, thanks for joining us. And most importantly, everybody out there, stay safe and stay clean.